It's funny how this franchise that was always labeled as the Karate Kid franchise has just now been redesignated as the Miyagi-verse. All because it centers around this one guy, this one Okinawan Japanese man who just somehow encapsulates this entire franchise, that it all centers on him, even though he's in 4 films in this series and most of it is just more of the impact of him. But even still, it's crazy to think that we have gone from a franchise to now a shared universe. Because the fact that this all leads to this film is not just really remarkable, but it's kind of silly if you think about it because of where things go, especially with even the TV show. And with this film, yeah, I just think it all started with this man.
I was born in the struggle, born to survive.
Karate Kid Legends is directed by Jonathan Entwistle and written by Rob Lieber. The film stars Jackie Chan, Ben Wang, Joshua Jackson, Sadie, Stanley, Ming-Na Wang, Wyatt, Oleff, Aramis, Knight, and Ralph Macchio. According to IMDb's plot synopsis, after Kung Fu prodigy Li Fong relocates to New York City, he attracts unwanted attention from a local karate champion and embarks on a journey to enter the ultimate karate competition with the help of Mr. Han and Daniel LaRusso. Somehow, this series has been running for 40 years and it just keeps going. Ever since 1984, this franchise has been building and building ever since then. And it's even crazy to think that at one point, Karate Kid was Oscar worthy, if you will, really, for Pat Maria as Mr. Miyagi. But it's just wild to me that the more this franchise goes on, the more crazy, insane, and bombastic it gets with each entry. I really enjoyed the first film. That's no brainer. Pretty much a lot of people are in agreement with that. And I actually think the second film is actually pretty good. It's not one that I would say is better than the first, of course, but it's one that is, a good follow up and a nice change of scenery, if you will, since that takes place in Okinawa instead of the valleys of Los Angeles. As for part three and the next Karate Kid, they are easily the worst in this franchise. The fact that that was the last film with both Ralph Macchio and Pat Maria in Karate Kid Part 3, that's kind of sad, if you will, because boy, that movie got real ridiculous, and it's almost like the franchise just started to become a little dumber, if you will, and the next Karate Kid is a joke. I mean, I'm glad that Hilary Swank managed to have a career for her own and managed to be successful as she is, because she is easily in one of the worst Karate Kid films I've seen to this date, along with part three. The Karate Kid remake was alright, but it should have been called the Kung Fu Kid, because I think most of us can agree that while the remake is okay, if you will, it is one where a lot of people think that the movie should have been called the Kung Fu Kid because of the fact that it doesn't really use karate, it uses Kung Fu. So why is it called Karate Kid? It's an IP, it's marketable. If you try to make a Kung Fu Kid, then people will get the distinction that it's not Karate Kid at all. So hey, it's money. That's the no-brainer question. I did really like the first season of Cobra Kai, and yes, I saw all of Cobra Kai, if you will, but it unfortunately went downhill after season 3. By the time it hit season 4 and up until that last season, everything just became dumb, stupid. It almost became a cartoon, if you will, of itself, and kind of abandons the idea of it being the perspective of Johnny to just Daniel, and also making Johnny kind of an idiot, if you will, a lot of the times. So now we get a sequel to the remake and a continuation of the regular series. This is now sharing a culminated universe with this film, having a tie into not just the remake, but also Cobra Kai, because apparently, according to people involved in the film, it takes place 3 years after the series. But I mean, if anyone were to ask me, is it of any importance? No, except for maybe one part of the movie, but realistically, that's not until the end. Seeing Jackie Chan and Ralph Macchio team up seemed really awesome. I will not deny that seems a really cool idea to get the original Karate Kid and one of the best parts of the remake with Jackie Chan being a martial artist that he is, and Ralph Macchio been doing Cobra Kai, still doing martial arts for that show. Seemed like a no-brainer, and it seemed really, really cool to get the two best things together. But this outing really fumbled that pairing so badly. I don't want to disgrace anybody who is probably going into this movie or are fans of the Karate Kid franchise and say that, man, you've really let my hopes down. I'm just only speaking for myself. You could do whatever you will, take it or leave my opinion, but I'm just telling you, this was just a massive disappointment, if you ask me. Even though I was not hugely excited, I was severely let down and really baffled by how this movie turned out. But there were a few bright things, but this became pretty stale by the end of it, and one that I think really kind of now hurts the franchise, if you ask me. But before I give you my problems, here are the few positives that I did see with it. The performances are enjoyable. Jackie Chan and Ralph Macchio are a fun duo with the screen time that they have, but Ben Wong is a very likable and charming presence throughout, and I really hope and really want this kid to go on to make a career for himself, because I can see a lot of screen presence to him. Really seems like somebody that I think a lot of people can really get behind and really follow. So I hope that after this movie, regardless of my opinions or not, I would like him to have a career, because I do see a pretty bright future with what he can do in this industry. Together, the three of them makes it a delight to watch, and that is the best thing about this film, is seeing the three of them work together, trying to help Lieber, Ben Wong's character, try to use karate in this tournament when he is a kung fu prodigy, like I said. And while I do have a problem with how much time Jackie Chan and Ralph Macchio gets, like I said, the amount of screen time that they are given with each other and with Lee, they can at least have some sort of chemistry with each other, even if the story is a bit of a hiccup. But again, I will get to that in a little bit. The fight sequences are exciting, showcasing both martial arts styles of karate and kung fu was a nice blend of keeping it interesting. Overall, the fight choreography was exceptional. That is one thing I can say is a bit of an improvement over something a little bit like Cobra Kai, in that the fights do kind of feel like they have not even stakes, rather, but it all feels like it's well filmed, even with some of the adults. Because let me tell you, Cobra Kai, when it got to like some of the adult parts, like ones that had Ralph Macchio, William Zabrak, and the other adults from the original series, the way they fight, and whether it was shot or editing, the fighting for them was always bad. It was always laughable. But for the most part, a lot of the fights in this movie do pretty well with showcasing the different stylings of both martial arts fighting, and it does lead to some pretty interesting and very creative fighting sequences. The direction is capable. Director Jonathan Entwistle tries to have the vibes that Karate Kid is known for, and does a decent job letting it feel like it's part of the franchise. I do respect that Jonathan Entwistle does his best, and I do think that he has the potential of actually making a good Karate Kid movie. And there are times where I can see a little bit of that in the moments throughout this movie that do echo, or at the very least try to capture the vibes of it, to where it does feel like it can be part of this universe. The cinematography is tight. Cinematographer Justin Brown manages to keep the fights close, and the look of New York is amazing, having it consistently steady. I'm happy knowing that the cinematography here compared to the show is a little bit better and makes things a little bit more, I guess, not even cinematic, but rather more a little believable in how characters kind of fight each other. And it did make for some pretty entertainment segments with those fights, along with the cinematography blend very well together. Some bright spots, but ultimately it all struggles so much as it goes along. By the end of this movie, I just kind of walked away feeling as if this franchise has really got nothing left to it. So here are now the negatives. The editing is sloppy. Each cut feels poorly done and quickly put together, leaving no room for the fights to be shown longer. Cinematography, the fights, they're all there. Editing is so bad in this movie. It's laughable. It's crazy to me that while they were watching this movie, people involved in the filmmaking said, yeah, that looks good. Because throughout this movie, I'm like, what the hell is this editing? If there is one thing I give a little bit of credit to Cobra Kai, is that sometimes even with the editing, they can try to find ways to trick around the idea of maybe some of the adults fighting. But they do actually a pretty good job of lengthening out the fights and the punches when you do see it. Here, is so poorly done, and is so laughable to think that this is what they thought looked good enough for a Karate Kid movie. It's insane to me, because I believe that these actors can fight. I believe Ben Wong and Jackie Chan, and even Ralph Macchio to a certain extent, can fight, but not the way it's all put together. The villains are flat. There's no depth or personality at all to be interesting, making them forgettable. Overall, these have got to be some of the worst, if not boring, villains I've seen in a Karate Kid franchise. They are laughably thinless. They are so poorly written that there's nothing interesting that can really keep fans excited to see more of them. The reason why people like Johnny is because of how much it felt so 80s that that's what people attached to. And then when they brought William Zabrak back for Cobra Kai, they fleshed him out, they made him a little bit better, at least in the first few seasons, and they made him a full-fledged character. Here, this villain, Connor, nothing. There's no personality other than just I'm angry. And that's about it. I don't blame Aramis Knight at all. I blame how this story goes with him, but he was done dirty because, man, talk about a really pathetic villain, if you ask me. The pacing runtime is all over. Every scene feels rushed and somehow keeps being elongated with a runtime of 1 hour and 58 minutes. It's really inconsistent. Throughout this movie, there are a lot of inconsistencies with how they want to approach this. Do they want to make it a short Karate Kid movie or do they want to elongate it? I don't know. But the movie is so indecisive on that it just becomes pretty much almost close to under 2 hours. When you start to feel like you cannot get your pacing and runtime down with how you want it to feel, how it wants to flow, that's a sign of a troubled film that was being stitched together and just thrown together at the last minute, if you will. The story is repetitive, though there is an interesting plot point in the film that involves a dad of a pizza shop whose daughter is friends with Lee, and Lee tries to train him how to fight. I think that is cool, but that lasts for like a minute. After that, it feels like a rehash of the other films. If you've seen one, you've seen them all. Once that interesting plot point happens, they just go straight back to Karate Kid territory, and it just feels like the most repetitive, unoriginal parts of what Karate Kid could do, but instead they just chose to do the same old that just cannot help itself but have the same things that you've seen before. The visuals are distracting, although it was shot on location, and mind you, it was in Montreal. It was not shot in New York, but still they used a real save. There were a few shots on green screen that looked really off and distracting. It also looked terrible as well. There are moments where you see Lee and Mia, his friend slash love interest, they're on a scooter driving to New York City. And you can tell that shit is poorly lit, and the green screen itself feels so obvious that it is so distracting. Or even when they're on like this high skyscraper near the end of the movie with the fight, very obvious you could tell that is a green screen. And it is laughable to me that they thought that was a good idea to utilize that rather than just using the location that they're on, or just not including parts where they didn't need to use visual effects, but whatever. The music is bland. Composer Dominic Lewis doesn't bring much to the table and doesn't stand out. It mostly used licensed music. There are probably maybe some parts where maybe the music come out, but for the most part, it is drenched in licensed music and just takes up the entirety of this movie, laying no room for Dominic Lewis to even shine or even give a score that can be complimentary of the film. In the end, this film doesn't offer much and repeats the same stuff as the other films in the entire franchise. As much as those bright spots help, it does not save this film at all, leaving this franchise out of gas and now stranded. Because honestly, I don't know where they can take this franchise, especially after Cobra Kai having wrapped up a couple of months ago. What else is there? They've already used up everything in terms of ideas, so I don't know what else they can do with this. And now that this movie is out and showcasing that, yeah, they really don't have any ideas, they just kind of threw everything together just so that way they can get a movie out to people and for Karate Kid fans. If you ask me, I think Karate Kid fans deserve better, but if some like it, hey, I'm not gonna squander your feelings and overall opinion on the film, but I'm just saying for myself watching this, I just think that maybe the franchise should lay dormant for a little bit so that way they can come up with something a little bit better, or just, come up with something better next time, because this is not giving me faith in this franchise. And after how Cobra Kai ended, while the last few episodes were good, the overall season itself became so goofy and so ridiculous that it's now leaving me with this movie in particular too. Not really hoping much for the franchise, but I could be proven wrong later on. I am going to give Karate Kid Legends a 4 out of 10. I really don't think this movie lends itself well to its talents, and I feel like the marketing for this movie is so misguiding. The fact that you have Jackie Chan and Ralph Macchio in this movie that could team up, they barely have screen time together, and because of that editing, it just ruins that pairing dynamic that could have worked and just ultimately sells with a film that feels like it was put in a microwave, blended, and it's just now thrown to everyone to enjoy. And you just start to realize how stale this is getting and how repetitive this franchise is starting to really hit. And I just don't know what's next for this series to grow and learn, because for me watching this, it shows to me that some fans love that, fine, but I just think it can grow and be better. So I will soon be doing a review for Predator, Killer of Killers, as well as Ballerina. So yes, look forward to those reviews and other reviews coming soon.